What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back in the video. Today we're taking a look at the wide receiver position, trying to find this year's Puka Nacua, wide receiver that you can get in the final rounds of redraft leagues that turns into a wide receiver one in fantasy, someone you're starting every week regardless of matchup. In my opinion, there are three things that a wide receiver needs for this to be possible. Number one, they need to be talented. And this is probably the most subjective one. It's the one where, even NFL teams are guessing at times as to which, late round picks in the NFL draft are going to be really talented, have really strong roles in the NFL. But nonetheless, it's something we do need to look for. Number two, they need above average quarterback play. You need to go off. You need to have a really, really good season to finish as a wide receiver one, let's say a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy. So while that's still possible to do with bad quarterback play, even established wide receivers that we know are extraordinarily talented struggle to do this. And so for us to expect someone who hasn't broken out yet to all of a sudden be a wide receiver one with bad quarterback play, it's just not something we should look for. So that's something we need. Last year's breakouts were Puka, of course, we're trying to predict that one. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Jaden Reed. Going into last season, it wasn't, like we were sitting here being like, oh, CJ Stroud's going to be incredible. Jordan Love is going to be amazing. Even Stafford, people were a little bit hesitant. Can he be as good as he has in the past, getting up there in age? And so it's not always that we need to only look at the quarterbacks that are awesome right now. We should be willing to take chances on quarterbacks that we think could, exceed expectations. Remember when Jefferson first broke out, when Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out, both of them in their rookie seasons, they had Cousins, they had Goff, but, that was before Goff had this late career resurgence. People were not all in on Jared Goff in that season. So again, we need above average quarterback play, but who exactly the above average quarterbacks are going to be is not always obvious. So don't just completely write off players because a quarterback hasn't been amazing thus far. That kind of brings us to our third criteria. And that's, typically when we have these quarterbacks who exceed expectations by a lot, it's because of great coaching. And so I think the third criteria is we need to look at teams that have really good coaching staffs, because it is more likely that a wide receiver is going to break out if they have a staff that's putting them in position to succeed, also a staff that is elevating the play of their quarterback through play calling. So I figured we'd try and work backwards from that criteria today. We'll start off with all the teams that I think have creative head coaches, offensive coordinators, then kind of eliminate the teams where maybe I don't believe in their quarterback play. Maybe they just, don't have any players that go in the later rounds as well. That's the case for some teams. And we'll kind of just start crossing teams off. We'll get to a smaller list and we'll see who the potential breakouts are on that list. So in my opinion, the teams with the best coaching staffs are 49ers, Dolphins, Rams, Lions, Chiefs, Vikings, Packers, Texans, Ravens, Bengals, Colts, Saints, Panthers, Bills, Falcons, and Broncos. Those 16 teams I feel the best about. We can kind of negotiate maybe the bottom of that list. I did have to cut it off at some point, right? I didn't want to only cross off 5 teams and be stuck with a bunch of them. I think that's a really good list of strong coaching staffs. Unfortunately, I would probably cross off the Vikings, the Ravens, the Colts, and the Broncos from that list. It's not that all these teams have bad quarterbacks, because that's obviously not the case. Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback. I think Anthony Richardson's going to be a great quarterback. I think the Vikings could have good quarterback play and especially have a good coaching staff that can elevate their quarterbacks. But in terms of finding a wide receiver one in the later rounds, I don't really see a path to any of those 4 teams producing that, given either how run heavy their offense is going to be or how already established multiple players are on those offenses, to where they'd need multiple injuries and then a random player who I don't truly believe in to break out. It's just so many things would have to happen that I would probably cross those 4 teams off. So that narrows us down to 12 teams. Among the remaining 12, I would also cross off the Lions, Texans, Saints, and Falcons. Looking at those teams, I just don't see any wide receiver being drafted in the later rounds that has even a remote chance of producing a wide receiver one season. I'd also cross off the Bills and the Panthers just because both those teams are going to be really, really run heavy when we look for these breakouts. We are leaning towards either a team that is super pass heavy or a team that's going to score a ton of touchdowns. And while I think maybe the Bills could get by on this point, the only wide receiver going in the later rounds is Shakir, unless you wanted to count Curtis Samuel, but I don't think he's going late enough to really consider in this video. So it's really only Shakir, and even he is kind of at that, fringe point where it's not really the later rounds. But I don't know. I don't really love Shakir. I don't think Shakir is going to be a wide receiver one. And so I kind of looked at those two teams and I'm like, if they're this run heavy, if we don't feel amazing about any of these guys later on, I'm not too into it. The one, if you wanted to keep the Panthers on the list, I would say Xavier Legette, not someone that I am in love with as a player. I think he's a little bit overrated as a prospect. I think he went too early in the draft. I think that the Panthers could have drafted a better player at that spot. You all know I love Deontay Johnson as well, so he's not really someone I'd go after. But if we are looking for good coaching, the Panthers have good coaching. If we are looking for good quarterback play, I wouldn't completely write off Bryce Young. I do think he could take a step forward into the second year. And so if you're looking for an extra name to add to the list we're going to talk about in a second among the the players that I think could be this year's Puka Nacua, I do think Xavier Legette has a better chance than a lot of other players going later on. So if you want to include him, go for it. I'm not going to, just because of how much I like Deontay, how run heavy the team is going to be. Then finally, the final team I'm going to cross off the list is the Kansas City Chiefs, just because we know they're going to spread the ball around a lot, and none of their top wide receivers even go in the later rounds. So the only people you could really talk about are like Tony, Sky Moore, Justin Ross, Justin Watson. But I don't even know if Tony or Sky Moore are going to be on the team this season, and none of those guys are going to be a wide receiver one. So I think you just cross Kansas City off. It's just not going to happen for them. So after all those cross-offs, we're left with 5 teams: the 49ers, Dolphins, Rams, Packers, and Bengals. All have great coaching staffs, all have great quarterback play, all have some wide receivers going in the later rounds that we can at least look at for this video. The late round wide receivers on these teams that stand out to me are Ricky Pearsall, Malik Washington, Demarcus Robinson, Dontayvion Wicks, Melton, Jermaine Burton, and Andrei Iosivas. Now, obviously, we're looking at very, differing levels of talent here, but I do think all 7 do have a path to breaking out. So let's break them down one by one. Pearsall is the one I feel best about on this list. I've mentioned many times, if you made me pick one player who is this year's Puka Nacua, I think it's Ricky Pearsall. He was taken in the first round by the 49ers, a high investment for them. He was a very highly regarded prospect around the league. A lot of very smart people are very in on Pearsall. If you look at prospect models that mostly use, production profiles, which 99% of them are going to use, they're not going to be as in love with him because the total production was never really there for him. But pretty much every film scout agrees he's going to be a good wide receiver in the league. You look at opportunity, Ayuk, Debo, they both need new contracts. That's not going to probably happen for both of them. So one of them might not be on the team in 2025. Could we see a situation where before the season, during the season, the 49ers are like, listen, we got to pick one, give them the mega deal, and maybe we can, sell one of them for like a, trade and sign kind of deal. That's possible. That happens. We could see a situation where right after that occurs, Pearsall is already going to be valued as a wide receiver too. Easy path to wide receiver 1 production if, he turns out to be as good as we think he is. So I think he's the most obvious choice to me for this year's Puka. If we look at Malik Washington, he is a prospect my model was in love with. He took a hit after draft capital came out. So my model, of course, looks at, athletically, how good are you? Production-wise, considering your competition, both on your team and your opponent, how well did you play? It was in love with him. Then he goes in round 6, and it was like, the history, of success obviously falls off with every round later that you're taking in the NFL draft. So he goes around 6. The model's like, don't love him as much. He is a smaller wide receiver, 5'9", 191 pounds, but that is totally fine on the Dolphins. All you got to be on the Dolphins is fast. And actually, he is bigger than Jalen Waddle. So don't be worried about size for him. He's also like barely slower than Jalen Waddle, so he has a higher speed score. Now, they did sign Odell, but Odell turns 32 in November. It has been years since he's had any sort of efficiency. I could see them kind of going with him as their number 3 wide receiver, mostly for the namesake, being like, well, we know he's Odell, we know he's capable of production, but I think Malik is better than Odell at this point of their careers, and I think there's a chance that he can really carve out that consistent wide receiver 3 role on this team. Also, a lot of people point out, they're like, well, you can't take the tight end, you can't take the wide receiver 3 because they have no roles. It's really all going to Waddle and Hill. And to a degree, yes, like so much of this production is going to go to the running backs, to Hill and Waddle on the Dolphins. But that's just what's happened in the past. They haven't really had a third wide receiver or a tight end that they've trusted. And so Jonnu Smith has upside, because what if they turn to him and they really trust him for consistent, 3, 4, 5 targets each week? What if Malik Washington turns out to be really good and he can command a decent target share? So just because it hasn't happened yet, because they haven't had the players, doesn't mean it's not going to in the future. But you also consider, he needs an injury, right? Like everyone on this list needs an injury, needs someone to get traded away for them to actually hit their ceiling. If Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle gets injured, and Malik already carved out the 3 and is now going to step into the wide receiver 2 role in this offense, he has significant upside. So I think it is, possible that it happens for him. And let's be honest, where's he going drafted right now? He's 117th wide receiver in Fantasy Pros, 98th on Underdog. You can get him in the final round no matter what format you're in, how many teams are in your league. You can always get him in the final round. Makes him a very strong pick there. Demarcus Robinson, he earned the starting role on the Rams from week 12 on last season. When he was starting from that point on, he was the wide receiver 20. So he's already produced late last season as, mid to low end wide receiver 2. So you throw touchdown variance his way, he could produce those sorts of numbers. What's he going to need? An injury, right? Still, if he's a wide receiver 3 on the Rams, he's going to need an injury. But we just saw Puka do it on this team last season. So you're telling me that one of Puka or Kupp can't get hurt. They can't rely on Demarcus Robinson, seeing how much they trusted him last season. Only really contending with Tutu Atwell right now. He already beat him out last year from number 3. I think Robinson is basically the locked-in wide receiver 3 on this team. Again, he's going outside the top 75 wide receivers on every single platform. That makes him a significant value, someone who does have high upside this season. Dontayvion Wicks is someone I have talked about a lot this summer, and while he's now up to the wide receiver 60 on Underdog, I think he's the earliest drafted wide receiver on this list. He still remains ranked outside the top 160 players on Fantasy Pros. That's going to get you into round 14, round 15 in redraft leagues, kind of depending on your league size and stuff like that. So if you're in redraft, he still basically is like your last wide receiver that you're drafting. He was exceptional on limited opportunities in his rookie season. There's been chatter that he's progressed even more over the offseason. A lot of target competition, obviously, on the Packers, but he does have an outside chance of winning their starting X wide receiver role. He'd have to beat out Christian Watson, or have Christian Watson just kind of not be fully recovered from these hamstring injuries, not really figure out why he's having them. Obviously, he's someone that has not been able to stay healthy in the past, and so an injury is not out of the question here. I do think there's a chance that Wicks gets a little bit too hyped on Underdog, and he ends up going a little bit too early for my liking. Hasn't happened yet, but it's kind of on the fringe of happening. But in redraft leagues, he is still going very, very late. I would love taking him as like your final wide receiver for that upside. I do think he can shatter his ADP, be someone that you are starting consistently, because this Packers offense is going to be really, really good this season. Behind him on the depth chart is Bo Melton, and I did want to talk about him because, like, if you're in a redraft league that's like 10 teams, you got like 6 bench spots, you're not drafting Bo Melton, right? And even in a lot of Underdog drafts, like, you're probably not drafting him unless you took Jordan Love, and, that's why Jordan Love's a pretty good pick, because you could draft like Love, and you could go like, Tucker Kraft, Bo Melton in the final 2 rounds and actually have a stack there. But he's the wide receiver 130 on Fantasy Pros, wide receiver 107 on Underdog. So he's much more, keeping in mind for Underdog, for those of you in deeper formats, a lot of bench pieces, right? Seventh round pick in 2022, didn't find his way onto the field until week 15 of last season, but he closed the season very strong. 4 receptions, 44 yards, plus 7 yards on the ground in week 16, 6 receptions, 105 yards and touchdown week 17, another 5 receptions, 62 yards, plus 14 on the ground in week 18. Played well enough in those weeks where he earned a decent role in their playoff games, 39% of snaps in their first game, 25% of snaps in their loss to the 49ers. So again, he's a long shot, right? I don't actually think that the wide receiver 5 on the Packers has a strong chance to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. That would be absolutely ridiculous to think. But I think there's a path here, more so if the Packers look at their depth chart and they're like, we have 5 wide receivers we want to get onto the field, and we're not running a 5-man rotation. They're probably going to run a decent 4-man rotation, and I do think they'll use all 5 wide receivers, but they might look at this and be like, listen, we have value here, and we think we're going to be a strong team this season. Maybe they do look to trade away one of these wide receivers. Maybe that happens, and then we see an injury, and we really see Bo Melton, someone who has a strong downfield role, who has been good when given the opportunity, especially he's getting hyped up a lot in camp. They really like this kid. If he can find his way onto the field as their 3rd wide receiver, again, you'd need a trade and an injury, but it's possible. And I just wanted to point it out for more deeper formats. Again, not someone you need to go after in a redraft league. Final 2 we have are on the Bengals, Jermaine Burton and Andrei Iosivas. I think that's how you say his name, but I'm not 100% sure there. Burton is their 3rd round pick this season. He is obviously the much stronger pick. I wouldn't sleep on Andrei, though. He was their 6th round pick last season. He's an athletic freak. 6'3", 205 pounds, 91st percentile speed score, 88th percentile burst score, 96th percentile catch radius. He was the 6th most athletic wide receiver in last year's class, top 10% all time. So very, very athletic wide receiver. You'll love that one, paired with a good coaching staff and great quarterback play. Reportedly made some really, really big improvements from last season. And last season, they were trying to find ways to kind of get him onto the field at times. We all know T. Higgins has not exactly stayed super healthy in his career. He's really one injury away from being on the field a lot. We will see once camps kind of roll around in about a week or so. We're finally going to have camps returning soon. I think there's a non-zero chance that Andrei wins the number 3 role. With that being said, Burton is still the odds-on favorite to win that role. Zach Taylor has talked glowingly about Burton, saying he loves that he can play all 3 positions. That is great to hear from a rookie, because if they can do that, it's just more opportunities to see the field. If someone can only play X, only play the slot, it's well, you have to win that role. And then there's times where we're just not really featuring that position, mostly for the slot when we're going 2 wide receiver sets, But if you can play all 3, you can back up all 3 positions. So if the X, if the flanker, if the slot, if anyone goes down, you can step into that role because you can play that position. But also, it just makes it so that you can just play more even if it's not an injury. You can kind of rotate onto the field and get more snaps. So that he can do that right away is great. Taylor's talked about how he loves how open he can get deep. That's great on the Bengals offense. He loves how he can adjust in his route. That's something that I think every wide receiver should be good at, but not everyone is. You see a lot of times when, wide receiver run their route and then there's a scramble play happening, which is basically just the quarterback leaves the pocket, gets to his side. You do see a lot of wide receivers just kind of stand there or just not really get open. It's what are you doing? This is an opportunity for you to make a big play. Burton's great at it, right? He can get open downfield. He can move with the quarterback. That's obviously something we want because Burrow does have some mobility. And then also said he never saw him drop a pass. Well, that's going to get you onto the field as a rookie as well, and the offense trusting you there. So, if that's actually the player that the Bengals are getting here, and he's just going to walk in, immediately replace what they were getting from Tyler Boyd, but he can kind of push for other spots as well. And maybe if there's an injury, he can be that clear-cut starter, that clear-cut wide receiver 2 on the team behind whichever one didn't get hurt between Chase and Higgins. That could result in wide receiver 1 numbers for him if he really hits. So those are the 7. This is how I would rank them in terms of who's likeliest to actually have a breakout season, be a wide receiver one, even if it's not for the full season, over the second half of the season, someone that really, elevates their play and can be someone you're trusting in your starting lineup every week, regardless of matchup. Number one, Ricky Pearsall, just because I think he's the most talented wide receiver on this list, and his path to an elite snap share is just like the easiest to envision because it doesn't have to only come through injury. Then Jermaine Burton, because I do think he's going to win that wide receiver 3 role on a really strong Bengals offense. That would give him a ton of snaps right away, and then he's basically one injury away from a really, really strong target share. Then Demarcus Robinson, since he's pretty locked in to the wide receiver 3 role. They use wide receiver 3 sets a lot more often than many other teams. And it's not like we're super confident that Cooper Kupp is going to stay healthy this season. After him for 4th, I would say it's Dontayvion Wicks, since he is, one of the more talented players on this list, definitely the most talented left on the list. It is fair to question the upside. Even if there's an injury, they are going to rotate these wide receivers a lot. So it's just a little bit less likely he can have a true, wide receiver 1 season. But I think the Packers are going to be very good. I think Jordan Love is a lot better than the public thinks. I think he's going to have a phenomenal second season here. And if that occurs, and if Wicks could win that X role, there's a lot of upside with that pick. Then I would say Malik Washington. He does have to beat Odell, but I think he's going to do that. I think he was a steal for the Dolphins in round 6. That capital does not guarantee he's going to beat out Odell, but if he can be a wide receiver 3 on this team. Again, one injury away from high-end production. 6th, I would say, is Andrei Iosivas, since I do think Burton is going to be the wide receiver 3. And so now we're looking at the wide receiver 4 on the Bengals. Gonna still have some snaps because they run 3 wide receiver sets a lot. And of course, all 3 aren't going to play every single snap. So he'll be on the field. He did take a step forward this offseason. I think he's going to get some hype in training camp, but if he's wide receiver 4, a lot of these other players I think can be the wide receiver 3s on their teams. And then Bo Melton, because he's currently the wide receiver 5 on his own team. No one else on this list is that low, but I think Bo Melton is talented. I do actually think there's a outside chance that the Packers trade one of their receivers away. They go with him as their wide receiver 4, and then who knows? Who knows if, him being their best deep threat, he can carve out a much larger role than people think. Again, if you're drafting on Underdog and you take Jordan Love and you kind of miss out on everyone else, you can end drafts with Tucker Kraft and then Bo Melton. Super unique, but could lead to upside, especially in the second half of the season. So those are 7 wide receivers going late to not even drafted who I think have a chance to being this year's Puka Nacua. Obviously, none of them are locks to do anything, but that's why they're going so late. If they had strong roles, they would not be going outside the top 60, 70, or at times 100 wide receivers in draft. So if you like this one, maybe you want to see the same thing done for the running back position, leave a like. If we get enough likes, I'll do the same thing at running back, and let me know in the comment section below who you think could be this year's Puka Nacua. If you're interested to see exactly where I have all of these players ranked, you can see that on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. That, my friends, is in this one, and thanks for watching.